occurrence the other night of the blood moon. I thought I'd go ahead and talk about it tonight, okay? Rather than wait. So, and the significance of the blood red moon is their greatest significance is in regards to their connection to the Jewish feast. Okay, that's when they're considered to have greatest significance. And we've looked at scriptures that pertain to the blood moon in our Revelation study. Joel 2:30 and 31. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Acts 2:20. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. So, and the Talmud, are you familiar with the Talmud? That's the Jewish book of tradition, which is an interpretation of the Mishnah. And the Mishnah are the oral traditions or oral laws of the Jewish faith that were then written down into the Talmud. It says in there, it says, when the moon is in eclipse, it is a bad omen for Israel. If its face is as red as blood, it is a sign that the sword is coming to the world. That's a quote from the Talmud. So, a lunar eclipse in that context means that things are bad for the Jewish people and their nation, and then a blood moon means that the sword is coming, which is a reference to really bad times. 4 blood moons on Jewish feast days within 2 years is very, very rare. And that's what's going on right now. That was the first one that we saw last night. There's going to be 4 blood moons in a 2-year frame, and all 4 blood moons will occur on a Jewish feast. Plus, there's also 2 solar eclipses that are on significant days also. Yeah, it's a real unusual circumstance. And there won't be anything like this for quite a while in the future. And whenever you have 4 blood moons consecutively, because not all lunar eclipses are blood moons, whenever you have 4, they're called a tetrad. T-E-T-R-A-D-E. Okay? And it's all based upon what's called the Saros cycle, which is a cycle. It's a mathematical formula which figures all these things out based upon 18-year cycle. Now, when Jesus died in 32 and 33, AD, there were 4 partial lunar eclipses, but none of them were red moons, and they occurred on the Feast of the Tabernacle and on the Passover, in fact. So when was this first red moon? What was? Yes, it was Passover. So that was the first red moon just this week. So every time a blood moon pattern has appeared in conjunction with the Jewish feast days, something has happened to the nation Israel, okay? And that's the conjecture of the books. Have you heard of any of the books that have been written about all this? John Hagee has it's a bestseller on the New York book listing. It talks about the blood moons. But the problem with part of John, first of all, let me say this about that. Okay? You know, when you start making predictions as a man of God, you sure better make sure you're right. Because when your predictions don't end up being right, you know what happens?
Ammunition starts flying.
You know, it just brings discredit to the Lord. And the thing about it, I don't even know when John published his book. And you know, John's not a bad guy. He's got a beautiful church. It's right on I-10. Have you ever seen his church? His church is right on I-10, and you go down the road a couple miles, and occurrences, actually, the things that have impacted Israel have actually begun before the first blood red moon. So for his predictions to come true, he's already a little bit behind. But that's okay. Maybe he knows better than I do. And maybe everything will come to the fruition that he believes it will come to. And I don't know enough about his book to really comment too much on it. But I do know that NASA, you know, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, has confirmed that we have had blood red moons on Jewish feast days going back to 1 AD 7 times. Okay? 7 times. So I'm going to talk about each one of those times. And I think they're in your outlines. 4 total lunar eclipses have occurred on the Jewish Passover and on the Feast of Tabernacles in 162 and 163 AD. That time frame coincides with the worst persecution of the Jews and the Christians in the history of the Roman Empire. Okay? That's a historical fact. Can't be refuted. 4 total lunar eclipses occurred on Passover and Yom Kippur in 795 and 796. That's when King Charlemagne of the Holy Roman Empire established a military buffer zone between France and Spain, and that action was able to halt the Arab invasions into Western Europe. Really a big impact on the Jews. Although by then, you know, the Jews there was a large community of Jews in Spain by that time. And when the Moors came into Spain, there was a lot of trouble for the Jewish population. 4 lunar eclipses on the Passover and Yom Kippur in 860 and 61. And that's when the Byzantine Empire, which is the Turks, defeated the Arab armies at a battle in Turkey, Lakion it's called, and permanently stopped the Muslims were trying to invade Eastern Europe at the time.
You skipped one.
Yeah, you skipped one, sir.
Which one did I skip?
842 and 843.
Oh, okay. Again, Passover and Yom Kippur, and that's when the Vatican Church in Rome was attacked and looted by the Muslims. So, not that well, that's bad, but you know what I mean. And then the last 3 occurrences of this are what's most important. Jewish Passover and the Feast of the Trumpets in 1493 and 94. Okay? What's important about 1493? 1 year after Columbus sails to America and brings diseases and kills all the Indians. That's the way they teach it in a modern high school history now. Columbus brought all these diseases and killed all the Native Americans. But King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who were the royalty of Spain, ordered all the Jewish people to leave their country, and who had been there since about 200 AD. They ordered them all out of the country. And they did it as a political move because they blamed their own problems. They were having economic problems. That's why one of the reasons why it was so hard for Columbus to get permission to sail. And it's one of the reasons they gave him permission to sail, because they thought, well, if we can find a way to get to the Indies quicker, we can get the spices quicker and we can make more money. But the Spanish royalty blamed the Jews for their problems, and they decided to kick them all out of the country. If you read Spanish history, the Spanish history and the Jewish history are interwoven. The Jews were there for over 1,000 years, very, very influential in the makeup of their culture. So here's a quote from Christopher Columbus's diary. It says, "In the same month in which their majesties issued the edict that all the Jews should be driven out of the kingdom and out of its territories, in the same month they gave me the order to undertake with sufficient men my expedition of discovery to the Indies." Some people think that's very important. The correlation between Christopher Columbus being sent to America and the Jews being expelled from Spain. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the expulsion, the date 1492 is a very important date in Jewish history. It's a day that's it's seen as a day of weeping and mourning. And on 30 July of that year, it's written that over 200,000 Jews were removed from the country in one day, that they had been planning this. And so tens of thousands of people who were pushed out of their homes died while trying to reach some sort of safety somewhere else. Spanish ships, it's said that Spanish ships took Jewish refugees out and charged them an exorbitant amount of money, took them out into the ocean and threw them off their ships. That's what's said, okay? And then there was a rumor spread that Jews were eating gold and diamonds, so nobody could find it on them. So there were guys running around killing them and stuff, cutting open their stomachs to get the stuff out. It was a really terrible. It's more or less like an inquisition. And so that was the same year when the Jews were expelled from Spain, that Columbus went on his amazing journey to America. He discovered America, more or less. And America is the home to over 500 million Jews now. I think it's close to 600 million Jews. So the Jews like to equate that to where Mordecai tells Esther in the Word, he says, help will come in another way. And for a sect, part of the Jewish, there's some Jewish sects that believe that America was chosen by God to be Israel's helpmate, okay? And to offer a safe haven for Jews, which it is, and then also to act as a protector of the nation Israel. But that's not going to last very much longer, the way we're going now. There were 4 total lunar eclipses on the Jewish Passover and the Feast of Tabernacle in 1949 and 1950. Of course, the significance of that is that that's the first Arab-Israeli war for independence. It's just after Israel had become a nation, again for the first time in 2,000 years. Israel declared themselves a nation in 48, but the permanent government didn't take office until 49. And and that's when the tetrad of the 4 lunar eclipses began. In May of 48, Israel proclaimed its independence, and less than 24 hours later, what happened? They were attacked by Egypt, by Jordan, by Syria, by Lebanon, and by Iraq. All of them sent their armies against Israel. And Israel, who had just become a country, then fought with, they were called the Israeli Defense Forces. And they fought a 15-month war. They lost over 1% of their population, which is a lot of people for a young nation like that to lose, but they were successful. And during those first months then of 49, they negotiated with the United Nations involved under the auspices of the United Nations. All the other countries, one by one, signed a peace treaty with Israel, except for Iraq, which never has signed that peace treaty. And then, so Israel, during that war, got the coastal plain, Galilee, the Negev desert, Judea, Samaria, the West Bank came under Jordanian rule. The Gaza Strip at that time was under Egyptian rule. Jerusalem was divided back then, and Jordan controlled the east part, and Israel, the western sector. Jordan controlled the temple area. So the war over, Israel focused then on building up its economy. They began their institution of the government, and then the last set of total lunar eclipses that occurred on Jewish holidays of the Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles was in 67 and 68. And that is the dates of the Six-Day War. Same time frame. Six-Day War, that's when Israel recaptured Jerusalem. Okay? And Israel's neighbors had been, they were into hoops to destroy Israel. And Israel exercised its right of, it was called inherent self-defense. And it began a preemptive war with them on the 5th of June in 1967. You know how Israel knew that that everybody was getting ready to come after them? The United States told them. Because the United States was flying U-2 spy planes over the Middle East, and they were taking pictures, and they were sending them to the Israeli government. And that practice, I was on the island of Cyprus in 1973, where the U-2 spy planes used to take off from, and we were still doing that. That was right after I got into the military. It's the first time I went TDY. So, yeah. But then, in 73, we were sending 2 copies of pictures. We were sending 1 copy to in this instance, Egypt, and 1 to the Israelis, so we were showing them that neither one was building up forces to go to war. So, but Israel attacked Egypt in the south and just wiped them out. I mean, they wiped them out. And that was followed, Jordan then attacked from the east, and Syria attacked from the north, and they wiped them out. The Israeli Defense Forces, by that time, one of the best fighting forces in the world. So then they gathered more land. But remember, this is just a little sliver of land on the Mediterranean Sea. God's promised land runs from the Nile all the way over to the Euphrates River. It's a huge area of land that they've promised that they ultimately will have again. So and then now, so we come to the present for blood red moon tetrad, which is happening on Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? So let's look at significance. There have been 7. So the next one is the 8th. And do you know that what the meaning of 8 is in the Bible?
New beginnings.
New beginnings. Yep, that's right. New beginnings. That's kind of scary. Although it might be kind of refreshing. But
I'm not gonna buy any more new clothes.
new beginnings. What was that? What'd you say?
I don't need to go buy any more clothes.
There you go. You don't need any more clothes. Save that money for clothes. But it was on the, what did God do on the 8th day? He rested. 7 days in a week. What's the 8th day? It's a new beginning of the next week. This is all Jewish thought about. This is all based upon Jewish numerology. Christ rose on what day? 8th day. First day of the next week in the Jewish thought. In Hebrews, the days of the week are numbered. They don't have names like we have Monday, Tuesday. They have like the name of Monday is Yom Rishon. And you know what Yom Rishon means? Well, it means day 1. That's all it means. Yom is day, Rishon is 1. Yom Shina is day 2. And that's the way they just number the days. They don't have there'll be a solar eclipse. I remember we were talking about solar eclipses. There'll be one of the Feast of the Trumpets in 2015, and there's another one on the Year of the Kings in 2015. So interspersed in these blood red moons are the the solar eclipses. And you know what an eclipse is, right? You know how it works? Everybody? Do you? I want to make sure. You understand how it works? No, I'm just looking at everybody. You understand how it works?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Everybody?
Yes.
Sorry. I had some pictures.
Tell us.
So,
It all illustrated.
a solar, yeah, I've got my telestrator right there. We only have to find this equipment at New Life,
Tell us about that.
as you can see. So a lunar eclipse is the sun's here, the moon is here, the earth is here and the moon is here. And the earth gets in the way and blocks the sun's light, okay? So, and then the shadow of the earth as it goes away from itself narrows and narrows and narrows. And so it stops before it gets to the moon, and the sun's light comes around the earth and irradiates the moon. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's red. And then a solar eclipse is what? That's when the moon gets in the way. Okay? Yeah. And that moon blocks the sun. Okay? So from our viewpoint, the moon is in between us and the sun, you can see all the little solar flares and stuff. So, look at Mark 15 for me. 42 through 44. Mark 15:42. Now when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member, he was a member of the Sanhedrin, he was a council member, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, which means he was saved. Coming and taking courage, he went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And you better know, that took a lot of courage. Because it was the Pharisees that had demanded Jesus be put to death. And the word tells us that Joseph actually fought against that decision, against the edict or the decision of the Sanhedrin to have him put to death. And then 44, Pilate marveled that he was already dead. Usually, crucifixion took several days. And summoning the centurion, the guy who was on duty to watch Jesus, he asked him if he had been dead for some time. So, that means that Jesus died on Friday afternoon before the Sabbath, right? Because when does the Sabbath start? Sabbath is on Saturday. When does it start? When the sun goes down. Okay? On Friday evening. And the Bible is clear that the Bible is clear that Yeshua, you know how Yeshua, that's Jesus' real name? Yeah. You know how we got his name and translated into Jesus? It's a transliteration of the Hebrew. The first letter in Jesus' real name is called Yod. So it's a Y, okay? And the Y originally, the Yod represents the Y sound in Hebrew, and many names in the Bible that begin with Yod are mispronounced by English speakers, because the Yod in the names is transliterated to the letter J. And the letter J, the way back in Old English, you know how the letter J was pronounced? Like a Y. And the pronunciation changed from the sound of a Y to the J sound, and they never changed the name. Okay? And that is a very, very, you know how you say Jerusalem? Jerusalem. You know how you say Jericho? It is not Jericho. Okay? It's Yadico. It's not Jordan. It's Jordan with a Y. It's not Jonah. It's Yonah is how you say it. So all these J words, we've got them all mixed up because we never, when the English changed in the way the J was pronounced, we never changed it in our own language. And the Yod is significant. You know what the Yod is the smallest letter of the Jewish alphabet. It's written smaller than every other letter. And that is why Jesus said in Matthew 5:18, he talks about not one Yod being changed from the law. A Yod is not, so what he's saying is not even the small, it's in the Greek it's called iota. That's how it's translated to the Greek, and I think we translate it to a who?
Stack.
A dot? A jot, yeah, that's what we translated it to, a jot. I was thinking dot. I was close. It was a yacht, not a jot. Or a dot. So, now that has nothing to do with the blood red moons, but I'm always fascinated by my language. So, but the original point, though, that I was talking about is the Bible is clear that Jesus was crucified on the Passover Friday, and then buried later that Friday afternoon or evening before the Sabbath actually began. And then he rose from the dead on what day? Which is the 8th day, which means new beginning. Okay? Sunday is when he rose. Matthew 28, 1 and 2. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb, and behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. After the Sabbath, the first day of the week, which is the 8th day. The first day of the week is, of course, Sunday, according to Judaism. And Saturday, we consider it Saturday, the 7th day. But the Jews really don't. The Jews do not have a name. The Jews, I told you that the Jews, every day is like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. There isn't a day 7. It's Sabbath. It's a holy day. So it's not given a name like all the other days. So Jesus, Yeshua, arose on the first day of the week, which is the 8th day. So in the grave, 3 days, 3 nights, rose from the dead. And you can look in Scripture, 2 Peter 2:5. The number 8 is significant in Scripture, and this is the 8th tetrad. That's why we're discussing the number 8. 2 Peter 2:5 describes the 8th person. Who's the 8th person? Do you know? 2 Peter 2:5. Yeah. Noah's considered the 8th person. And what's happening? It's a new beginning. Brand new beginning. Okay? 1 Peter 3:20. What's it say? No. The 1 Peter. 8 souls. And what happened to the 8 souls? They passed through to the new beginning, the new world, in fact. So, when is circumcision performed? 8th day. All these things are significant in the Jewish mindset. So, and then, and that was a foreshadowing. Circumcision was a foreshadowing of the circumcision that's made without hands, okay? Which is a putting off of the body of sins from the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. Colossians 2:11. So, connection with new creation, new beginning. The Jewish firstborn was given to Jehovah on the 8th day of their life. So, the blood moons of 2014 and 2015 will occur on Passover, in the Feast of the Tabernacles, and then on the Feast of the Trumpets. It's the 8th set, and this is the only tetrad in the near future that aligns itself with Jewish holidays. There will be other tetrads, okay? There was one in 0, 3, and 4. There's this one now. There'll be one in 32 and 33, one in 43 and 44, one in 50 and 51, 61, 62, 72, 73, 90 and 91. But the difference between those and all those others I just mentioned, and this one is none of those others are aligned with the Jewish feast. So these are unique in that cycle. The next time the tetrads will be aligned with the feast is over 100 years from now. So when you put all that into perspective, what does it mean? I don't know. Does it mean that the second coming of Jesus will happen at the Feast of the Tabernacles in 2015? What is the Feast of the Tabernacles? It's called the Feast of Booths. It's where good Jews they go out in their yard and they build a booth. It's a remembrance of God with us.
Shelter.
Yeah. It's His provision, His presence with His people. So is God going to come again and be present? I don't know. I don't have anything that can. I don't have anything in the Word of God that can tell me that. So I don't know.
Odds are we'll still see significant events.
Yeah, we probably will because we won't. Well, one of the reasons we will is because we want to. That'll be one of the reasons. But will it be a time of war? We're definitely ready. The Russians are getting ready to take over all of Ukraine. All the Americans have been told to leave. What else is going on in the world today that indicates that we're close to end times? The lessening of the strength and importance of America. What else?
Iran's close to a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, Iran's close to producing a nuclear weapon. May have one, according to some folks.
Russia is working its way through heading west.
Yep. Reclaiming its empire, which it lost 30 years ago. But now it's just starting to rebuild. And Russia will be a very significant player in the end time. Is it Magog?
Yeah.
Magog. And so, you know what our president's position is on the nation Israel right now. That we need to go back to the pre-1967 war boundaries before when and take away all that land that Israel acquired and do what with it? Give it to the Palestinians. Do you know there's no such people? On the face of the earth, there are no Palestinians. That's a made-up name, which was initiated by the Arab League, incidentally, but that's okay. We don't tell anybody that because we don't want them to know the truth. But at least it's not the government. So, what kind of condition? I know today's economic reports are pretty good, aren't they? Aren't we doing real good economically? How's that gas out there? How's that gas?
Real good.
Everything's hunky-dory. They don't figure gas anymore into the cost of index living allowance. They don't figure gas. They don't. You know what else? They don't figure groceries. So you don't need to eat or drive. Just stay home. And then Obamacare will take care of you when you have the death panels. Everything will be okay. So
Who's the Arab League then? Would they be?
they're all the Arab. I think the Arab League started in the 40s or 50s.
So that would be.
That would be almost all of them. Sunnis and the Shiites, and they're always, that's why there's always all these bombings in Iran and Iraq. Those are the Sunnis and Shiites blowing each other up. And the Sunnis and Shiites, at one time, Iraq was two countries. And then the British came in and the United Nations got involved, and you know what their great idea was? Let's make it one country. So they took two tribes that hate each other and they put them in one country. And they hate each other. That's one of the biggest hindrances to the furthering of jihad, is their hate for each other. But when you get somebody like Ahmadinejad that believes that he can bring forth the 12th Imam by causing a worldwide catastrophe, which is in their holy books, talk about a worldwide catastrophe will bring the Imam to the earth. And then their Imam will reign supreme, and their Imam really is Antichrist, in my opinion. Their Imam will reign supreme. He'll desecrate the temple. Kind of sounds familiar. But, so we have this pattern of these tetrads. I've got a few more minutes. The thing is about these, a lot of Bible prophecy people like to try to manipulate. Well, you can't manipulate the sun and the moon. It's a very constant thing. As I said, this whole process is based upon mathematical formulas which are tried and true. But you can't set. People want to predict what's going to happen. And it's just that nobody can predict the second coming of Christ. So it's just a good idea for us to be aware. I think that's one reason why it's good to study Bible prophecy, to be aware of what's going on. Because as the world deteriorates more and more people will have more and more questions. But you have to understand that Israel still remains the main target of the world's aggression. Everybody, The Jews have been blamed for a lot of things a lot of times, and mainly out of jealousy. Because the Jews are special people. According to the Word of God, they're special people. So, and then, just to clarify things, there's a huge difference between astronomy, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about the blood red moons, and astrology. Astrology really is it's a system that was instituted at the Tower of Babel, and it has to do with demon worship. So something you really don't want to expose yourself to. It's a form of witchcraft is what it is. So I remember when I was a lost person reading my horoscope every day. It was a horror every day, so that's why they call it a horoscope. So, I think, Jesus told his disciples that there would be signs in the end times, signs in the heavens, that should be watched for, unusual signs, and we know from our study in Revelation that there's unusual signs. We talked about Joel. Revelation 6:12, there's another place that talks about the blood of red moon. And were the Jewish feasts relevant to Jesus? He was a feast goer. He recognized all the Jewish feasts.
Would like to eat? Would like to eat?
Yeah, he was always going to dinner. One of my
Okay.
But in Luke 21:36, it talks to us about to watch and pray that we might be able to escape all that is to happen. And that's in reference, I think, to end times events. And, so, I think. So Israel's staunchest ally?
United States.
United States. We are, I don't know, I don't think we could be considered their staunchest ally anymore. There's probably some European countries. But the U.S. has drawn away from protecting Israel, which really makes the Middle East a more dangerous place because it emboldens the people like Ahmadinejad and the Muslim Brotherhood. But you don't have to worry about the Muslim Brotherhood because a lot of them are now working in the United States government. They've been appointed to high political positions during this administration. So, and you know, Iran believes that it is its place in history to cause the fall of Israel. So, okay.
Ahmadinejad isn't still president. What is he doing now?
He's pulling the strings of the guy that is president, and both of their strings are pulled by the Ayatollah, who's really the president. The presidency there. Ahmadinejad is a very he's a very firm believer in their religion per se in Islam, but and the new president is a more westernized guy. He looks better to your face. He's not as radical. You know, Ahmadinejad was kind of a nutcase. This guy looks better, but he's still, they're all under the control of the Ayatollah, so it doesn't, their positions don't change. You know how the Iranians are developing their nuclear weapons? They're following the example of the North Koreans. Step by step by step. They've already seen the roadmap, so they know exactly how to do it. They're not stupid. The North Koreans have nuclear weapons, don't they? They have nuclear weapons, yeah. And the Iranians soon will. So it's getting to be more and more scary, and the world is full of lunatics. Did you hear about this guy at the Boston Marathon thing that took a rice cooker with confetti in a duffel bag to the Boston Marathon ceremony to honor the people that had died? Crazy man, walking down the street. But that's the influence of demons in the world, and you know what? It's going to get more and more demonic. So we've got to protect our kids and our families of this. Okay, any other questions?